Traveling, adventuring, and I would say life in general is a lot like these elements of adventure. When it's time to go, you might not feel ready or even want to leave, but for some strange reason you push yourself forward. You answer the call to adventure. And of course, there are times when everything is going perfectly and there's happiness to be found in that. Gandalf shows up with your pipe. It's easy to keep moving forward on days like that. But then there are days when everything goes wrong and you feel miserable and you just want to give up. It rains all day, soaking your clothes, and your damn horse runs into the river along with all your food. What does this have to do with the JET program? I had applied for an early departure from quarantine and so left after staying in the hotel for 10 days. I took the bus with some other jets to the airport and then traveled by plane to my prefecture, Kochi. So far, I would say this adventuring business isn't that bad. There have been tough days for sure, but I've yet to encounter a situation that I couldn't overcome. The sirens are standard across most East Coast settlements in Japan. You might be wondering why these sirens are necessary. So, I live in a town called Kuroshio, just 5 minutes from the ocean. There is a powerful earthquake called the Nankai earthquake, which occurs every 100 to 200 years. And it's one of the strongest in all of Japan. With the following tsunami waves 20 meters or higher, the projected death toll of the next Nankai is 250,000 people. So, yeah, let's not tell the new guy about the sirens. I'm joking, but seriously, I think it's something so ingrained in the culture of the people living here that it just slipped their minds to even mention it. It's just such a normal part of their lives, and I find that fascinating. For example, figuring out how to turn on my stove without it randomly shutting off, getting connected to Wi-Fi, buying groceries, figuring out public transport, driving. These are mundane things in Canada for me, but here in Japan, because of the different culture and the language barrier, small things like this are an actual challenge. Cooking especially has been a challenge. Finding and buying the right ingredients for a dish and working with the foreign ingredients has been fun, but definitely difficult. A good example is my first morning. It was just a challenge to cook scrambled eggs, toast, and make a cup of coffee. Thankfully, I've come a long way from that, and I actually made some homemade chicken soup the other day. I've never truly lived by myself before, usually living with my parents or in a shared condo where you can hear other people. When it's just you, the solitude is peaceful and relaxing, but sometimes the silence can be quite loud. In fact, every restaurant experience thus far has been nothing but delicious, beautiful food. Everything from the filling and savory katsudon, to the salty, meaty katsuo no tataki, to flavorful and soul-warming Japanese curry. The meals I've cooked for myself have still been a little hit and miss, and sometimes a little more miss than I'd like to admit, but armed with vegetables, miso paste, fresh meat, rice wine, soy sauce, green onions, ginger, and various carbohydrates, I produce some half-decent soups and curries. Some I would even feel confident serving to guests. Non-picky guests, but guests nonetheless. As often as possible, I've been biking or running around my village. Tsunami towers are a cool place to run up and exercise, and usually few, if any, people are ever there. In the evening, I kind of feel like Batman looking down on the town below me as it becomes enveloped in the twilight. Although I think Japanese Batman might be out of a job, as there's probably not enough crime to fight Japan, especially in the rural areas. I signed up for a short marathon hosted by the Board of Education in February and have been practicing some distance running for the event. The run is only 3 kilometers, which is pretty short all things considered, but I haven't seriously ran in a long time, and getting back into shape has been pretty eye-opening. When you're as new to running as I am, it's pretty easy to make fast progress on distance and times. However, it's also just as important to eat healthy and give your body proper rest. Without good sleep and eating habits, a lot of that progress is just wasted. Afterwards, I was questioning why I put myself through that marathon, wondering if it was worth all the fuss and freezing my butt off. In the following week, some of my students mentioned that they had seen me that day, watching them and running in the marathon myself. A coworker's kid saw me at the grocery store and also mentioned seeing me at the marathon.
After those two experiences, I knew then it was a great decision and it had paid off big time. In a way, it was proof to myself that I was willing to be there for the community and be a role model. Now, I'm not the best ALT, the best representative for Canada, or the fastest runner in the Kuroshio Marathon, not by a long shot, but I am here, participating, learning, and getting better every day. The most rewarding things about being in a club, to me at least, is when it's time to leave. The students are headed home and hollering, "See you!" at the top of their lungs. You know, maybe they are genuinely happy I'm finally leaving and they don't have to put up with me anymore. But it does make me feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. I may be a small part of some people's lives, but just because something is small doesn't mean it isn't important.
It also meant I had to say goodbye to over half the teaching staff at my junior high, and nearly half of the education department at my board of education. It was tough for me because I had built up a relationship with those schools, students, teachers, and people, and now I had to move on from that. It's kind of a weird sadness. I guess this is the best way to describe it. It felt like I was leaving my family in Canada all over again. So the whole month of March I was kind of down, as every week I was heartbroken and saying goodbye to more and more people I had grown to love. I can't imagine how tough the public school system is for teachers here. I submitted my design. It's an anime/cartoon drawing of my supervisor, whose favorite hobby is fishing. One day he shared with us a Buddhist proverb that went something like, "If a man wants to be happy for a day, he should get married. If a man wants to be happy for a week, he will kill and eat a boar. If a man wants to be happy for life, he should be a fisherman." So, obviously, I couldn't fit the entire proverb on a t-shirt, so I settled with just "happiness is fishing." I'm no graphic artist, but I'm happy with how it turned out. I believe the contest will be held soon, and the submissions are now closed. I hope I do well. If not, I'll at least have a cool t-shirt. We had a French exchange teacher visit our school and work with us for about half a year. Her name was Marie. Through high school and university, I pretty much forgot she existed, but now that I'm an ALT, I think about her a lot. She pretty much had the same job that I do, but just in Canada. I wonder if my students in Japan will remember me, or if they'll forget me, just like I forgot Marie. Maybe it's vain to think I'm interesting enough to be worth being remembered. Even so, I'd like to think that if they do forget me, they'll at least be influenced by what I showed them, and if and when they deal with foreigners in the future, they'll think back to the fun and the laughs they had with their doofus ALT, and use that experience to approach foreigners and the outside world in the future. Foreigners aren't a novelty, magical, or anything of the sort, just as the Japanese people aren't. We're all simply human, and ultimately, we are more similar than we are different. And maybe that's me being idealistic and naive, but if I can show people that, and that's what they remember, I think I'll be satisfied. Now for an embarrassing story. So I worked a Saturday a few weeks ago, and I thought I would be a good Samaritan and fill up my work vehicle before the next work week. This was after I had finished teaching a full 5-class day, on top of dealing with a parent observation class, the very last class. Now, somebody was parked in my usual fill spot at the gas station, so I just gassed up on the opposite side of the pump. Now, up until this point, for some stupid reason, I had it stuck in my head that the leftmost nozzle was always gas. This is decidedly untrue. The red-colored nozzle is gas, but it's not always on the left-hand side of the pump. Do you see where this is going? So, I filled up with the left nozzle, thinking it was a bit odd that it was green this time. After I filled, I knew something wasn't right, and I checked the receipt. I translated it, and it said light oil in English. So the gas must have light oil in it, I naively thought. I started the car and drove. It felt like a parachute was behind my car, pulling it back,
and eventually the car started to shake. I pulled over and Googled the kanji on the receipt. Turns out I had not filled up with light oil gas, but had actually filled up with diesel fuel. I was, in a word, screwed. Here's a story about how I smacked a Japanese student upside the head with a textbook in the middle of class. Full disclosure, it wasn't because she was sleeping, misbehaving, or using improper English. It was actually completely accidental, so before you call the cops on me, just at least hear me out. In Kuroshio and in Japan proper, people love them some nature. They can't get enough of it. So much so, many schools keep their windows and doors open all day. If you've seen Japanese school windows before, you know those suckers are massive, and they seem to never have screens in them. Of course, Japanese people don't just do this for their love of the great outdoors. It also gets ridiculously humid in parts of Japan, so cranking the windows open spares the air conditioner. And I guess as a side effect, it cools the students and teachers down too. Now, here's another fun fact about Kochi. If you walk 10 seconds into any forest, you'll immediately find yourself in Jurassic Park. Giant centipedes, giant spiders, giant dragonflies, giant bees, and giant murder hornets are just a taste of the wildlife you can expect to get acquainted with. Now, picture this: a building, perhaps a school, with its windows and doors open all day, sitting in the middle of Jurassic Park. Guess what creepy crawlies also want an English lesson? The answer is all of them. So here I was, standing in the middle of a sauna called English class, trying my best not to melt. Suddenly, a dragonfly the size of my hand careens into the classroom. It buzzes over several students' heads and they recoil in moderate annoyance. Not satisfied with their reaction, the creature decides to hover over one girl's head for 5 excruciating seconds. She shrinks down and swats at the dragonfly, but her retaliation only emboldens the beast. It thinks it is a helicopter, and her head is its shiny landing pad. Nothing was going to stop it from initiating a perfect 6-point landing. Nothing except for the sweaty Canadian Sasquatch on a caffeine withdrawal, wielding a rolled-up copy of New Horizon. I pulled back, took aim, and proceeded to annihilate the back of my student's head. Now, of course, her head was perfectly curved to redirect my attack up to the dragonfly, exactly according to plan, and I sent it sailing out of the class window.
Just as no self-respecting anime is complete without an onsen episode, I would be remiss to neglect the bold Basan bathing experience. Onsen is a Japanese hot spring where people come to wash and relax. Some hot springs are believed to have certain healing properties, and like most things Japanese, there are rules and customs you have to follow. For example, you usually aren't allowed to enter if you have tattoos because of their association with the Yakuza. Another example, you have to wash your body before entering a hot spring, because you're dirty, fool. And the last, and perhaps most relevant rule to our discussion today, is that to enter, you must be dressed in your birthday suit. Ain't nothing glamorous or romantic about bearing it all in front of a bunch of strange old men. In a certain sense, it did encourage me that they were also keeping up with onsen fashion. It washed away my fear that I was about to go running into a family-friendly pool with all my chips on the table and my cards face up. As for the downside of being in a pool with a bunch of old men, well, I would talk about it, but I think it's just low-hanging fruit. Getting breakfast and a coffee, we drove to a town called Tsukumo. Once in Tsukumo, the captain greeted us, an elderly Japanese man who had a friendly, crinkled and weathered face. We jumped on a boat and jettisoned off to a quaint wooden raft about 5 minutes from the coast. It was roughly 15 by 15 feet, hammered together and anchored by its 4 corners to the bottom of the sea. It featured a small canopy to block the sun, and a toilet that simply dropped down into the ocean. If we gazed into the water, it was easy to glimpse multiple groups of squid just casually floating around the raft. But squid are highly intelligent, and none of them took the bait that day. Our hopes and dreams of fresh kraken meat were shattered. That being said, Within a few minutes, my friend caught his first fish ever, reeling it in like a pro. One of the Japanese teachers made a campfire, lightly breaded the shrimp and crabs, and threw them in a pot of hot oil. He cooked them at a high temperature for about 15 minutes and sprinkled a little seasoning on top. Then we could eat the crabs and shrimp, shell and all. They were salty and crunchy, a bit like kettle-cooked potato chips, if they were shaped like a crustacean. 10 out of 10 would river again. This year alone, 2 different sets of school trips were cancelled on my students. If that wasn't bad enough, we were planning an English camp right at the beginning of summer vacation, but the tide of COVID washed in and struck down students and organizers, rendering our machinations all but impossible. I even had to quarantine for a week since I was close contact. The good news is I never got COVID, and instead I got an awesome care package full of fresh food. I'm tired of COVID interfering with people's lives, and I hope we can bounce back from these setbacks twice as strong. My friends and I are planning a trip to Tokyo this summer, and first on the itinerary is Mount Fuji. I'm terrified. There is a Japanese proverb that goes, "A wise man climbs Mount Fuji once, a fool climbs it twice." That's about as foreboding as it gets, especially considering that despite its popularity, Mount Fuji is no slouch of a climb. No doubt, many unprepared and unfit would-be mountaineers have had to commit a walk of shame down the mountain. I don't want to join those ranks, so I've been training. I'm going to climb Mount Fuji, and I'm only doing it once. Tokyo is a daunting city. It alone rivals the entire population of Canada, so it's understandably easy to get overwhelmed by the endless sea of people and concrete. However, the metro system in Tokyo is so good. It makes traversing the city quite simple. I found that through purchasing a Suica card and using Google or Apple Maps, I could easily and cheaply find my way anywhere. Suica and Passmo are rechargeable cash cards that can be used in place of manually purchasing train tickets. Many shops and vending machines conveniently accept them, even at Tokyo airports. As good as the system is, I did find that transferring from one train to another is a little stressful. It usually involves desperately following colored signs through a packed train station on a 3 to 4 minute time limit, looking for the right rail line and platform number. The good news is, trains are so frequent in Tokyo that if you miss your ride, or you get on the wrong train, another will show up in about 5 to 10 minutes and you can easily course correct. After leaving the second last station, exhaustion washed over me like I've never experienced before. Every few minutes I had to stop and catch my breath, my head and heart pounding, my thighs protesting with every step. Progress at this point was painfully slow, and worst of all, the sun was setting behind the mountain. I knew I had to keep pushing forward because if I didn't, I would be climbing in the dark. My friends had almost all hiked ahead of me, and it was much, much too late to turn back around. I had nowhere else to go but up. Mercifully, I reached the final station. It was cramped and busy. Some of the amenities included small curtained-off pods filled with snoring hikers, decent bathrooms, and an open eating area. I found my bed, devoured a meager but welcome supper with my friends, and hit the hay. After an unrestful 8 hours tossing and turning, sweating and freezing, it was time to start climbing once again. The morning mountain was incredibly busy with hundreds of headlamped hikers shambling up the trail to watch the sunrise. I sluggishly strapped on my hiking gear and, together with my friends, joined the pilgrimage. It was about 2 hours of crawling up jutting mounds of smelly shale in the dark, with the added luxury of being joined by several hundred people. The good thing about the crowd was that it was slow, so it was easy to take a second and catch my breath. As light was teasing the horizon, my friends and I shambled past one final torii gate, signifying we had arrived at the summit. Relieved, we found a spot, hunkered down in the frigid dark, and looked to the horizon. Winking lights from towns far below sparkled like stars. We had a perfect viewing. The clouds were alight with fiery reds, oranges, and yellows, backlit by the blue sky and framed by the blackness of the universe beyond. After eating the most expensive cup noodles in the world, we slid back down the mountain, quite literally as the shale at some parts was incredibly loose. Progress was fast, but it still took around 4 to 5 hours for us to complete. Once at the bottom, we had another meal. I had pizza and beer. Finally off the mountain, I dived straight into an onsen. A wise man climbs Fuji once. A fool climbs twice.
One beautiful morning, I decided I would take a relaxing bike ride along the Kuroshio coast. The ocean was sparkling like a gemstone, the sun rays were gentle, and the air was heavy and tangy with sea spray. I felt at peace, melding my mind and soul with the beautiful countryside, taking in the fresh air and tranquility. Then, I was passed by a professional bicyclist. Bright neon shirt, helmet, gloves, flashing red backlight, fancy curved road bike, the works. Good for him, I thought, getting out and enjoying the beautiful view. But then I was passed by another pro bicyclist. Then another, and another. I whipped my head back in alarm, and around a rocky corner emerged a horde of brightly garbed professional cyclists, sunglassed faces boring into the depths of my soul. In that moment, I came to a horrible realization. Not only was there a bike marathon going on, but due to a cruel twist of fate, I was now an active participant. I did what I usually do in situations like this and panicked. Not wanting to get in anyone's way, I cranked up my speed, zoomed in front of the pack, and whipped around corners. It was certainly majesty to behold, this large Canadian man in street clothes, beard blowing heroically, his feet spinning in a tornado like a Looney Tunes character, flying down the highway on a street bike with a grocery basket on the front. After 10 minutes, I lost steam and the horde surrounded me. I pedaled amongst them, terrified that at any moment I might run into one of them and cause a bicycle avalanche. Thankfully, the bikers wisely kept their distance from me and effortlessly passed me. Some gave me odd looks, others ignored me, others even gave me a wave or a thumbs up in encouragement. When the final few stragglers zoomed past, I pulled off the road, panting and sweating. I rode the rest of the way home in shock and disbelief, kind of embarrassed. In Japan, it seems if you don't join marathons, marathons will join you. The eggnog slide came up along with my pressing question: which is better, sparkling apple juice or eggnog? The students asked what eggnog was. I explained it tasted kind of like custard, but you drink it like thick milk. That it was very sweet and spiced with cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla. Unbeknownst to me, apparently Japanese people find cinnamon distasteful, and as a result, the entire class said they would prefer drinking apple juice. My heart sank, my hopes and dreams dashed, the wind in the sails of my national pride blew out. I collapsed to the floor of the classroom and shriveled up into a husk. With all hope lost, I weakly offered up the eggnog recipe packets I had crafted so lovingly. To my surprise, one hand raised, then another. Soon the whole class had their hands in the air, asking, no, beseeching my glorious eggnog scrolls. With devilish joy, I distributed the recipes, and the class reveled in Google's broken Japanese. I have a feeling eggnog isn't going to take Japan by storm. But perhaps somewhere on the remote island of Shikoku, in the small town of Kuroshio, a few junior high school students will make some, taste it, and then promptly pour it down the sink.
I was about 2 hours out from Matsuyama City, white-knuckling the steering wheel at how cramped and fast the road was, when snow and black ice graced my tires. Sliding down that mountain highway with a treacherous drop on one side and cars flying past literally an inch away from me, with ice and snow throwing me around, it really made my blood run cold. Man, it was probably gorgeous, but I wouldn't know it because my eyes were locked onto the road the whole drive there. After my harrowing drive to Matsuyama, I was rewarded by wrapping around a mountain that overlooked the whole city as I entered, granting me a breathtaking cityscape view. I'd have to revoke my Canadian citizenship card if I didn't go to a skating rink in Japan at least once. It was 2,000 yen or $20 for admission and for skate rentals, which is a little expensive, but I think most people spend a good 2 or 3 hours skating, watching other skaters, and drinking hot chocolate. Or at least that's what I did. So I took my time and got my money's worth. I saw some people had paid the statue, and when I went to pay my fare, I reached for my wallet, pulled, and then the chain on my wallet actually broke. I've talked to a couple Japanese people and they say it's a sign of bad luck, but I'm not so sure. Maybe it's the spirit telling me I should spend some money, invest in myself and things I like. Who knows? Post-hike, I feel like it wasn't worth it. It was long, steep, and the trail was rocky and sticky, so progress to the top was difficult. The highlight wasn't even Yasugo Falls, as the water trickled out of the waterfall like an old man dribbling on a toilet seat. I was told I should wait for a good rain to see the waterfall. We'll see. The true highlight of the trail was the dozens of little statues decorating the path, each someone different and decorated uniquely. At the top is a decent view. I don't know if I'll climb this trail again except to maybe work out, as the steepness really killed my legs. Also, it's a long hike, maybe a 4-hour round trip. The children spent the majority of the hike foraging on the trail. They would run up to us with leaves, acorns, sticks, berries, rocks, bugs, just about anything that was remotely interesting, and give it to us. They actually found tons of wild raspberries, which were entirely edible and quite delicious. A few wooden kappa totems were sneakily hidden along the trail. I had to keep my eyes peeled for them. Eventually, we arrived at the Kappa shrine and I got to pay and make a wish. Afterwards, we had a picnic lunch and hiked back to the bus, corralling any stragglers and graciously accepting leaf and rock gifts. After completing the hike, we watched a short video about this stinky bird that looks pretty but rolls around in smelly things to throw off prey. I was trying to stay awake and this video wasn't helping. That's all I'll say about it. On the bus ride back, this one kid opened the bus window and was leaning out, so I got to spend the ride home in a state of sheer panic. He lived, I think.
Time flies. It feels like just yesterday I landed in Narita Airport and was drugged through a gauntlet of paperwork hell and stuffed like a sardine into a hotel for 2 weeks. Living a year in Japan has fundamentally changed me as a person. My outlook on life and my approach to challenges and goals has shifted dramatically. I used to be afraid of trying new things, of going into social situations, and especially of interacting with people in a different language. That has paralyzed my decision making and caused me to spin my wheels. And don't get me wrong, I'm still afraid, but I just ignore my fear and do it anyway. Everything in Japan is so much more difficult because of the language barrier and cultural differences, but now I only think that makes everything a worthy challenge. For example, I was able to drive to a mechanic shop and use my broken Japanese and my phone's voice translator to book an oil change for myself, and then I could hold a disastrous but interesting Japanese conversation with my mechanic friend. This is something that a Basan from a year ago would never have been able to do. For teaching, I've really come into my own. I have little fear or shame. I've embarrassed myself so many times in front of my students, I'm bomb-proof, and I can get away with doing hilarious and crazy things. For example, one time when we were talking about fire in class, I physically demonstrated stop, drop, and roll, rolling across the floor and yelling, "Stop, drop, and roll!" In other classes, I'll speak in a silly voice, or yell, or whisper, or make crazy gestures. It's a lot of fun. I've discovered that self-deprecating humor is a great tool. I'm blessed by the hair gods to be bald at 24, which is something I'm self-conscious about. What helps me overcome this insecurity is to laugh and joke about my baldness with students. I've come to care less about what I can't control in life, and instead focus and work hard on things I can. So, I should really be called the Bald Basan. Last year, one of my students stopped going to school. She said she was demotivated by her older sister, who was wildly successful, and so she decided to make excuses not to attend classes. She would say things like, "I feel sick in class," or "I'm not smart enough to do well in the future." She quit coming and was gaining weight and feeling depressed, hiding from teachers when they would come to check up on her. Recently, I started writing letters to her and sending her drawings of Pokemon or anime characters. I also made a Spotify playlist for her, and she shared some songs with me. When I was feeling defeated and worthless for my own personal reasons, she wrote to me saying that she had tried coming back to school and saw her friends in the nurse's office. She said her friends were crying and telling her that they missed her, and she was surprised because all this time she thought no one cared about her. It's so beautiful and so sad. I've cried about it too. I won't take credit for her returning to school. She decided to do that all on her own, and she has a long way to go to get her life back on track, even if she starts studying regularly. But I'd like to believe I inspired her to try. And she'll never know it, but her courage inspired me too. I've felt unwanted and worthless the last couple months, and her reacting so positively made me feel like I'm good for something. So I've been trying to do more things like that, because it's harmless and good. Sometimes that's all a person needs to turn their life around. Someone who just gives a damn. So let's all give the people in our lives a few more dams, shall we?
Ended up throwing up on the raft after the 3 hours. Let me tell ya, that coffee didn't taste any better coming back up. I attempted to keep fishing after that. I felt pretty good to start with, but every time I stood up to refill the bait cage, I would get a wave of motion sickness. I would have probably thrown up again. Instead, I collapsed into the fetal position on the raft, closed my eyes, and slept until it was time to leave. Perhaps the most disappointing thing is that for all my suffering, I didn't even catch any fish. My supervisor, the lucky bugger, managed to bring himself one, so the trip wasn't entirely in vain. I'm not sure what strategy I will utilize next time. Some people take seasickness medication before they go out on the ocean. Some people recommend you stay standing on the raft to get used to the motion. Anyway, the fish had me beat this one. I'll have to fight back harder if I'm gonna catch anything.
Wow, this is the 15-month video. What happened to the last 2 months? Well, don't worry, we skipped a couple filler arcs. First and foremost, I'll talk about my solo adventure to Hiroshima. I blasted off and drove across Kochi, jamming to tunes and downing Boss coffee like I was the CEO of adventure. I stopped at a pirate museum. It wasn't really all that interesting. I expected more swashbuckling and buccaneering, but the museum was more academically focused, which was kind of boring, especially when I couldn't read a lot of the information. Also, references to One Piece were non-existent from what I could tell, which is tremendously disappointing. Afterwards, I raced across the rest of the Shimanani Kaido. It was a gorgeous drive, lots of mountains, ocean views, villages, and bridges. It was expensive to take the toll road across, about 3,000 yen, but holy cow was it breathtaking. The first bridge off Shikoku is ginormous, and certainly the biggest bridge I've driven across in my life. Turning off the Shimanani Kaido, I had a busy but otherwise chill drive down to Hiroshima. The museum displays artifacts, stories, and pictures of atomic bomb victims. Since I work with children every day, it hit me especially hard as I was imagining some of them hurt and suffering. It made me cry, but many other people there cried as well. After the Peace Museum, I began a long drive home, but I didn't make it. I first noticed something was wrong when I parked and took a break after driving across the Shimanani Kaido. My engine was complaining when I started my car. I thought it was just regular old car trouble. So, as I drove through Matsuyama, every time I slowed down to around 20 kilometers, the engine oil light would come on, but when I would pick up speed, the oil light would turn off. So I thought to myself, it's probably not a big problem. Whatever it is, I can fix it when I get back to Kuroshio. That was a bold assumption, all right. For you drivers out there, if your engine oil light ever comes on, you gotta pull off and stop your car and find a mechanic right away. Totally oblivious to the imminent danger, I was driving through a tunnel and my car shook like I was in an earthquake. The engine began to rev until I could no longer maintain highway speed. Something popped and ricocheted, and there was a crashing and clanking of metal.
Then the engine revved more and smoke billowed out from the hood. Surprisingly, it was then that my monkey brain realized I was screwed and needed to get my car to some sort of pull-off ASAP. Rapidly losing speed and stuck in a tunnel, I managed to drive my smoking butt into a wide pull-off and tuck my car safely inside. Engine off, here I was, alone in my exploded car, in the middle of a tunnel, in the middle of nowhere, Japan. I was shaking for a few moments, because having your car engine blow up on you is frightening, and when I gathered my wits, I called my supervisor. Not 2 minutes into that phone call, highway patrolmen pulled up behind me. They aren't police officers, but they helped me by setting up cones and turning on emergency lights. I gave my phone to them and we swapped back and forth with my supervisor, figuring out how to rescue my sorry butt. This whole process probably took 2 hours, and I waited another hour for the tow truck to come and pick up my car.
There's been no shortage of bold adventures lately. I discovered the nearest Japanese skating rink last winter, which was surprisingly difficult, they are few and far between, and skated my heart out. 4 months later, an idea struck me like a bolt of lightning. Surely there are many other ALTs who enjoy ice skating. Someone should organize an event. If only there was someone bold enough to undertake such a magnanimous feat. Oh, wait. The Matsuyama ice skating escapade was the Matsuyama ice skating escapade was the first event I've ever arranged all by myself. Before I'd organized small Dungeons and Dragons games, but now I would be the man in charge of a whole shindig. Not gonna lie, I was feeling the pressure. I started my quest with a little research into the specifics of the skating rink, and afterwards I drew up a poster with a proposed date and time, as well as some general information. After a quick check, I posted it and then was mortified. I had just organized an event in a foreign country and needed to manage it without being able to speak the language. How would I survive? Why did I do such a crazy thing? Near the end of the event, I took a moment to stand back and watch everyone else skate, and had such a weird feeling. All the fun, the experience, the friendships born and strengthened, merely the people there, none of it would have ever happened if I hadn't acted upon my dream. And it wasn't much effort. All it required was a Swiss cheese plan, some rudimentary Japanese, and help from my friends. I realized in that moment I was literally watching a dream come true. My dream. What a weird feeling. It fills me with such a strong sense of accomplishment. I want to put together more fun things for people to do and make more of my dreams come true. So like Clark Kent with his glasses on, they didn't recognize me, which I still laugh about. The marathon went spectacularly, although we unexpectedly ran through a beach river at about the halfway point, which was a little more excitement than I had planned on. It's funny, in all my time in Kuroshio, I had no idea about that river. Also, running on the sand hurt my legs and feet, and after the event I noticed I had injured my foot. For about 2 weeks after the marathon, I just had to do light walking and jogging until the pain went away. Fear not, by the time of writing this, I have fully recovered. It was an action-packed day, and hanging out afterwards with my friends, enjoying the street food, made me incredibly happy.
The monstrous insect was thin and gangly, large, the size of a plum, but eerily silent. The yellow and black stripes slashed across its body all but identified its evil intent. It stormed into my classroom through the open window and whizzed above the heads of my elementary school students. They gasped and ducked their heads in mild terror, their attention held hostage. My Japanese English teacher desperately tried to redirect the class away from the creature, but her efforts were in vain. Our English lesson ground to a halt, and it was time for a hero to take action. I rolled up my copy of New Horizon English Elementary Course 6, all too aware that the last time I wielded this incredible power, a student bystander was caught in the crossfire. But my determination was unwavering. The six-legged demon had buzzed its last buzz. I could not fail again. I would not. Patiently I waited for the bug to fly low and sprang into action. I leapt up and swung with the fury of 1,000 jaded ALTs, but all the determination in the world couldn't salvage my aim, and I missed. But
The downdraft from my whiff pushed the wasp down further and into ass-kicking range. Whipping my arm around, I caught the creature with a backswing. It hit the wall, then collapsed to the shelf, buzzing like a chainsaw. It was pitiful, but with my students at my back, I could offer no mercy. With 3 slams, I pulverized the beast, smushing it into bug paste. The word Yosakoi itself means come and visit at night. The dance originated in a festival meant to bring in business to rural Japan and boost the local economy in Kochi Prefecture. In Yosakoi, you dance with naruko, which are interesting wooden clappers, originally used by farmers in fields to scare away birds. You also wear very flashy and beautiful uniforms called wafuku. Our uniforms this year took inspiration from a blue, gold, and black colored bird called a kingfisher. I think our dance was inspired by the kingfisher as well. Everything is elegant and airy. I was told I look like a genie wearing the uniform, which, I won't dispute. It was nice seeing a newcomer's perspective to all things Japanese. Some strange cultural things in Japan are so normal to me now. Sometimes I forget the rest of the world doesn't bow, or put money on a special tray to pay, and other things like that. My mom was also surprised how forested Japan is, and how tropical and dense the forests are. It was screaming hot while we drove around Kochi. Did I mention it's hot in Kochi? Well, the air conditioner in my car is not amazing, but my mother was a trooper about it. She loved Japanese food. Her favorite dishes were okonomiyaki, shio yakisoba, and tonkatsu. I took her to the Kuroshio roadside station and she got to enjoy katsu no tataki, which didn't gross her out. I was impressed with her resolve. She also got to try Japanese izakaya a couple times. She loved the plum liqueur, and she also enjoyed trying plum jellyfish, which was salty and sour. For travel destinations, I got the pleasure to give her a tour of my hometown in Kuroshio, and she also got to see the gorgeous Makino Botanical Garden, Nakatsu Gorge, and Okitsu Beach. Her favorite thing in Japan was to wander through malls and grocery stores and explore what there was to buy. She was especially interested in the food. I took her to my school and she got to meet all my students, who absolutely adored her. She participated in class and did a small presentation on herself, which I followed with a Kahoot quiz that rocked the socks off the students. It was super awesome. I applied for and was chosen for the position of AJET rep for Kochi. It just basically means I manage a Facebook group with a partner and post information and organize events. Organizing people is tough, and strange people even more difficult. It's a bold move, even for me. Hopefully I'll be able to pull through. I've already wrangled a community river float. Supposedly there is a typhoon that week, so yeah. Hopefully that won't interfere with my plans.
I got kissed and licked by a random Japanese man who I'm going to call the Licking Man. Of all the things I expected to experience in Japan, this was not one of them. The first time he got me, I was enjoying a rock and jazz gig with my friends. The music was awesome, the atmosphere was electric, and I was energized. I danced my heart out and thoroughly enjoyed the music. After the show, we were leaving and this inebriated Japanese man stumbles towards me and offers me a hug. He's thin, balding, and dressed a little more on the punk side than the average crowd goer. I had seen him dancing with us earlier, and I thought he wanted a bro hug. That was my first mistake. My man's was after my neck, and when I gave him the classic one-arm bro embrace, he got me with his greasy goober, planting it on my jugular and giving me a smooch. My friends and I managed to get everyone on the river, I think about 19 people, within a reasonable time frame. Although the float was only 45 minutes, everyone seemed to enjoy the scenery and cold water. I know I sure did. Afterwards, I got to have lunch and chat with a few new Jets who had just arrived this summer about their experience in Japan so far. I listened to their adventures and misadventures. I was horrified to hear some of them had already encountered cockroaches. I'm still cringing when I think about that. I didn't find a cockroach in my house till about halfway through my first year. If I did find one earlier than that, I would have booked the earliest flight out of Japan. One of the major highlights of my time in Japan is now dancing Yosakoi in Kochi City. It was exhausting, stressful, but exhilarating. Honestly, a lot more like climbing Mount Fuji than you might realize. If you can dance Yosakoi for 2 days, walking and waiting in between venues in the hot sun and rain, soaked in sweat, constantly hungry, dehydrated, experiencing a burst of adrenaline, and then suffering a crash, waiting for hours in between bathroom stops. Yeah, if you can manage all that, you can manage Mount Fuji. Anyway, their tales reminded me of my first 2 weeks in Japan and how special that time was for me. Japan was so strange and magical back then, and everything I did, even the smallest things, seemed so grand and difficult. On the business end of AJET, managing a Facebook and Line account and getting information out for people is more time-consuming than it is difficult. Process involves searching for recent or long-standing events, translating and organizing the information, and then posting it. Organizing and running on AJET specific event is much more trouble than simply spreading information, as arranging people and venues can be a bit of a headache. But despite my belly aching, Yosakoi was a good life decision. Not everything is good for you in a way you'd expect.
I'll tell you a wild story about my health checkup in Japan. I'll start by saying employees of Kuroshio Town are required to go for a health checkup, and I just so happen to fall into that category. I arrived at the clinic, and the first thing they have you do is submit your paperwork and provide a urine sample. In Canada, you collect a urine sample in a plastic cup and close the lid tight before handing off your sample to the technicians. It feels weird, but it also feels mostly sanitary. At the clinic in Japan, you essentially use what is a small Dixie cup with no lid, and with the utmost care, you must do your business in the cup, leave the bathroom, and carry that over to a counter for the technicians. I did this careful shuffle walk in full view of everyone in the waiting room over to the counter. In case you're wondering, I didn't spill, but I ran through hundreds of horror scenarios in my mind where I tripped and splashed the floor, or someone, or myself. So, there I was, a huge hairy bare-chested Canadian man with his shirt rolled up over his head, with this poor Japanese nurse desperately trying to stick these suction cups on me. She would just get one attached and try for the second one, get it attached, I would breathe and the first one would fall off. She'd grab the first one, attach it, I would breathe, and the second one would fall off. This repeated for about a minute. Eventually she left and came back armed with medical tape. In theory, this was a genius idea on her part, but the problem was the tape didn't stick to my skin, but instead stuck to my hair. Now whenever she stuck me, a cup would still fall off, but when she went to readjust it, she was just giving me a wax too. She would apologize every time, I would say "Daijobu," and the process repeated. Eventually another nurse came in to see what the holdup was, which I'm sure was just friggin' hilarious. A half-naked Sasquatch on the table, shirt over his head groaning, ECG cables covered in tape and hair strewn across his body, and her co-worker scrambling to plug me in. Organizing people is difficult. Just like there are people who hand in their homework late back in school, there are adults who should know better but are late and irresponsible as well. In fact, a lot of adults. But going into a situation expecting other people to be late and ill-prepared makes it simple. You as a leader must prepare for people to be unprepared. Ideally, I could lead people in such a way they would be inspired to be on time and be prepared for themselves, but Kochi Jets aren't that tight-knit of a team, and I'm not that great of a leader. But I think my partner and I have done a good enough job that a lot of people will have fun, and the event will basically run itself without too much work on our part. I'll report back and give you the post-operation breakdown. I think I'll make a separate video about this topic in the future, but since arriving in Japan, as part of my transformation, I have lost 35 kilograms of weight, or about 75 pounds. I would say a vast majority of that weight loss has taken place this year and has been the result of consistent exercise and eating properly. I do cardio or some form of exercise almost daily. It's nice having people being shocked how fit and strong I've become, instead of poking me in the stomach. I also have a lot more confidence and respect for myself, knowing I'm taking care of myself properly. The only downside is I'm constantly going through new wardrobes and having to find new clothes that fit. But it's a good problem to have.
Like Knights of the Turkey Order, we donned our hazmat suits, wrapping plastic bags around our feet. Then we set off to see the turkey coop. It was about what you'd expect it to be, a big barn loaded with turkeys. Water was set up to irrigate them, and of course they were well fed, with massive piles of feed outside. You could hear them in a distance gobbling away. It was kind of unnerving because they would all gobble at the same time whenever something spooked them.
I was honored to take a small group of Jets to the Eno Town Paper Museum, and we were lucky enough to make homemade paper lanterns. The process was surprisingly simple and streamlined, and is foolproof. I'm sure I could find a way to ruin it, but somehow even my paper turned out good. You take a wooden mesh and dip it into a slurry of paper water and then pull it up. You sift it and then let the water drain. Afterwards, you flip it upside down and press it gently and the water drains. You let the paper sit and dry, which only takes about half an hour, while you peruse the gift shop. Perusing the gift shop is a very important step that you can't skip. Long distance runs are brutal. It takes a lot of mental endurance to control yourself and push yourself to go hard and far. It's also painful. A guy has to be careful not to hurt himself. Injuries are a real thing when you push yourself so hard. I've also started to experience knee pain, so I had to lower the amount I was running and switch over to leg weight training and cycling until my knee recovers. I'm slowly building my kilometers back up, but at my fastest, I was running 10 kilometers every day. I've ran 3 half marathons. Those are hard but doable. I'm hoping to reach the point where I can run half marathons again. I've been hyping myself up with gym edits. Those are fun to make.
So he reached out and like just pet my forearm. I'm like, whatever, I don't give a shit. Kids are weird. But then he like, he like grabbed like the corner of my t-shirt and like lifted up a little bit. His eyes go just like as wide as saucers. He's like, oh, big muscles. I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, nice body. And I don't know, that was really gratifying for me because now when he said it, it wasn't so much of like an insult and like a dig at me. He was now saying nice body because like genuinely I've transformed myself enough where that's no longer an insult. It's now a compliment. And I think that's something that's really powerful that you can do in your life is take those things that are negative about you, take your weaknesses and turn those things into strengths. And so I've taken that weakness of mine, my physical appearance, but also my health, and I've turned that into one of my strengths. So be bold.
Turns out, to no one's surprise but my own, that was way too long a time spent on the ice, as my legs were sore and my poor feet had blisters the next day. As for how other people fared, I noticed a lot of first-time skaters at this event, but I saw huge improvements in everyone. At one point I got to show my friends how to skate backwards. They were impressed and tried their best, but it's a skill that requires more than a single day's worth of practice to master. Everyone had a good time, and they were happy with the video I made for them. That's the last Kochi AJET event planned for 2023, but my partner and I will be back with a vengeance in 2024 for more AJET shenanigans. Outside of food, I exercise every day, starting with roughly an hour of some sort of cardio, running, walking, biking, or hiking. I've been healing my knee, so I've stuck to biking, up a mountain and around the sea, which has been quite cold. After freezing my butt off, I do dumbbell weight exercises, alternating between upper body and lower body. I don't take a break from exercise, but I usually look forward to it every day. There are days where it's a little harder to give myself the push to get going, and I feel weak or tired or sore, but I just go anyways. There has never been a time where I've regretted doing a workout.
Going through airport security in Vancouver, they asked me to remove my belt. This was a grave mistake. So, my jeans have been too big on me for about a year, but since clothes shopping in Japan is a life-threatening struggle, I haven't had the opportunity to buy some better fitting pants. My belt and a prayer was the only thing keeping those suckers on me, and now that security asked for my belt, prayer was doing the heavy lifting. I'll tell you this much, thoughts and prayers don't do much to keep your pants on. So there I was, walking through the X-ray machine, one hand on my waistband, barely able to keep from mooning my pantaloons to security and everyone behind me. Little did I know, they needed to scan my body before I proceeded, and to do so, I would have to stop and raise both my hands above my head and let go of my waistband. With no other choice, I hiked those denim suckers up as high as I could, pushed out my stomach, and raised my hands for the machine to scan me. "Are your pants gonna fall down?" the security guard jokingly asked me, to which I replied, completely deadpan, "They might." One last weird thing I noticed, when I was having a shower back in Canada, my mind saw Japanese characters on the fine print of the Canadian shampoo bottle. Getting closer, my brain would switch back and I could recognize the English words, but holding the bottle away, as soon as it was unintelligible, the words looked like kanji and hiragana characters. It was rather odd. One thing I'm grateful for is that Canada gave me a fresh perspective on Japan, the JET program, and life. The communities and people in Japan are important, but they are insignificant in the larger game of life. In 2023, I fell into a trap, and I got so wrapped up in things that don't matter, I lost myself. Just like I tell my Japanese students that school isn't life, the JET program isn't life either. Nobody cares who is an ALT or a regional advisor or an AJET representative or a prefectural advisor outside of our very small, very niche communities. The power and leadership structures, the coteries, none of that matters. But across my time in school, my time in JET, and across the rest of my life, what will always matter is me. Specifically, me getting better. The goal is, and always has been, to be better than I was yesterday, every day. So, I have my own challenges, fears, and dreams. You better believe it. And those are what matter. Life is me versus me. And this is something I'm working on in 2024. Another person will always be better at something than me, but I can always be better than myself. Night skiing is bitterly cold, but the floodlights lit up the course perfectly, so I had no difficulty seeing other people and the terrain and getting my ski legs underneath me. I was completely blown away how beautiful it was. If I could capture a moment forever, looking out over the mountain range at sunset that night in Hokkaido, it's something I'll never forget. It was comparable to the majesty of a Mount Fuji sunrise. That night was just a warm-up for the second day, where we hit more challenging slopes of taller mountains. It would take 10 or 15 minutes by ski lift to reach the top of the mountains, and about the same to go back down. A snowstorm had moved in, so our grand view of the mountain range was unfortunately hidden. I got to show off my skiing skills on the easier, more open courses and ski backwards. I did pay for my showboating, and several times I crashed and wiped out hard. I'd say it was worth it. Students are the best part of the JET program, and certainly the best part of teaching. They are my main reason to stay in Japan. When I arrived back from Canada and stumbled like a sleep-deprived and caffeinated zombie into school, students shouted "Good morning," "Hello," and "Long time no see." Their faces lit up and beamed when they saw me. They smiled. They were genuinely happy to see me again. That felt good. It felt like I was somewhere I belonged, doing the work I should be doing. This year, I've been enjoying some of the best English classes I've experienced in my ALT career. For the most part, students feel safe contributing in the classroom, especially in the first grade. They will explode if they don't shout out the answer immediately. Trust me, students knowing the answer and then wanting to speak and contribute is a great problem to have. My time spent as an ALT tape recorder is now very little. Sometimes my recorder services are used, but it's not my only job. I have 1 or 2 direct contributions to just about every lesson. I ran a full marathon in Japan. It was one of the hardest things I've done in my life. Between climbing Mount Fuji, dancing Yosakoi for hours in the blazing summer heat, and now running a full 42-kilometer marathon, I've managed to push my body and mind beyond its limits. But I was ready for it.
I trained like the devil for 6 months, running, biking, lifting weights, and disciplining my sleep and diet. As prepared as I was, the marathon fought back like a wild fiend. It was in a very real sense a mental battle.
The fear of facing these unknowns in the future can be exhausting. My strategy to fight against this feeling of helplessness is to focus on keeping myself and the world around me as solid and as orderly as possible, and to try not to worry about unknowns I cannot control. Practically speaking, this means staying on top of house cleaning and chores, keeping a consistent daily routine, which includes a workout, and keeping busy. So, while there is a lot of chaos happening around me during springtime, and it's not always possible to maintain a routine, I still have a solid foundation to embrace the springtime storms. There is so much to see and explore within driving distance, and so many different beautiful sakura viewing locations. That's what I love about Japan. There is always something new around every corner. One spectacular hike I did was at Nametoko Gorge. It's a jaw-dropping hike with giant boulders, a sprawling river, ancient trees, and an ancient stone path, and countless waterfalls. It was so beautiful it hurt. I've been posting some highlights from that hike as YouTube shorts. It's a shame that it was a little cloudy and snowy that day, but it was such a stunning spot, I think it's worth going back again. The man working the tourist center for Nametoko Gorge was incredibly friendly and kind. He made a delicious hot sandwich and coffee for me, which warmed my body and soul after that bone-chilling hike. Although, he did ask me to put a coat hanger on my head. My adventures in gorgeous gorges don't stop there. I went to Oboke Gorge. It's a popular tourist destination and my first time visiting Tokushima Prefecture. There are many ghost and monster stories originating in the surrounding region. Interestingly, most of them involve the Japanese raccoon. It's usually masquerading as people, or tricking people and causing havoc and chaos, or stealing things. Darn Tanuki. I ran a baton marathon in my hometown Saga with one of the Kuroshio JTEs and my friend Alex. I was proud because when it was my turn, I just sprinted 4 kilometers and broke my personal records for running speed. I haven't run that hard in years. I also haven't been able to run a mile in under 10 minutes since junior high, and that race I ran a mile in about 7.5 minutes. As far as professional running goes, it's slightly below the average speed for a healthy man my age, but I'll get there. I was pleased with my effort, and I look forward to more improvements as I continue to lose weight and get healthier and stronger. I'm not sure there are many crazy people on earth who would take 2 days holiday to sign up for a gym membership, but I am one such person. I underwent a whole month-long journey, complete with a training arc, to fight my way into a nice Japanese gym. It's a little frustrating, as if working out wasn't already hard enough to find the motivation for. The language barrier and the availability made the process slow and painstaking. Working out for me was harder than buying a car in Japan. I was defeated by my arch nemesis, the ocean. Once more, my Japanese supervisor and I went unto the breach and tried our hand at fishing in Suzu. Once more, it was windy and wavy. Once more, I got horribly seasick. I'd like to sit here and tell you that I fared better than my last fishing expedition, which resulted in me throwing my guts up. Well, this time I didn't lose my breakfast. I did not fare better. My supervisor is a legendary fisherman and ended up catching about 10 eating-sized fish. What's tragic is he did most of the catching with the rod that was meant for me. My body activated alert mode and I hopped on my feet while the ground was still shaking, confused why I was awake, why I was standing, and why the earth was shaking. Moments later, my phone alarm went off, and Japanese announcements came over the intercom. I could hear doors opening, cars starting, and the sound of people moving outdoors. And without any further info, I assumed it was time to evacuate. A tsunami was on its way. Outside my house, my neighbor was running already, and she said to me in Japanese, "Let's go!" She headed in the direction of the tsunami tower, but I did not follow her. Instead, I sprinted in the direction of the mountain evacuation point. I had been instructed in the past to go to the mountain if I needed to evacuate, and while I trust the tower, a mountain is a mountain. I called my friend and met him at the evacuation point. Once atop the mountain, I scoured the internet and my disaster safety app so I could update the ALT region block I am a part of. I was waiting for confirmation from the Japanese government that there would be no tsunami, which arrived at midnight. Working with the information I had available, my friend and I were able to keep our friends and fellow Jets updated. It turns out, despite this being a relatively strong earthquake, we were not in danger from a tsunami. A fact I learned a full half hour after. No native Japanese people or fluent Japanese-speaking people asked us if we were safe or offered us information about the earthquake, which I was disappointed by. It was a good learning experience, and I got good practice if I ever need to evacuate again. A legendary AJET was playing tunes on his saxophone at a local sakura festival there. AJET hiked the tallest mountain in western Japan, Mount Ishizuchi. This was a revenge hike for me. On my first attempt last year, the ropeway cable car was under maintenance, forcing us to hike an extra 6 hours up and down the mountain. This meant we were unable to reach the peak that day. This time, the weather was clear and the cable car was operational, so we were given a fighting chance to make it to the top. We started off the adventure with the aforementioned cable car, our ears popping and hearts pounding in excitement. It dropped us off at the trailhead and we walked through the Ishizuchi Mountain Village, raiding the vending machines for coffee. My toe was feeling a little blistery in my shoe, and a very nice lady gave me some second skin to prevent it from rubbing inside my sock and boot. This probably saved me a lot of pain later that hike. I was positioned near the rear of the group and enjoyed chatting with ALTs I hadn't had the pleasure to meet before.
I was shocked when I read through the journals of my first grade students, and the future dream of one particularly spunky student was to buy goats. While other students wanted to be salarymen, healthcare workers, or video game designers, this student wanted to buy goats. I wrote back to them, my curiosity getting the better of me. Why do you want to buy goats? The goal of the lesson was to write a dream in English. You could have or be anything you wanted. You could be a millionaire, a famous artist. You could own a plane or a treasure or a company. Normal, typical, everyday desires. So I had to know why. Why of all things would goats make the list? The student simply replied, "Goats are cute." My t-shirt features a phoenix and has my favorite flower, the marigold, on it. I also drew a tsunami wave and Mount Fuji in the background. The red and purple lightning happened by chance. I was playing around with colors to use for the background, and these ended up being eye-catching color combination. Kaizen is a Japanese philosophy of improvement. It translates into English as continuous improvement. Sometimes it is used by companies as a work philosophy, but I like to apply this sort of idea to all aspects of my life, especially my health, to be continuously improving in all aspects. The kanji of Kaizen breaks down to mean change and good, so essentially to improve is to make good changes. The changes, in my opinion, are a result of small, everyday actions, a cool philosophy, and a cool t-shirt design. The Beach Museum never disappoints. You would think that a half marathon would not be as mentally or physically challenging as a full marathon, and you would be right. However, it was held in the pouring rain. We lined up at the starting block for 10 minutes and everybody stood in the downpour. It was great because we were all miserable and soaked before we even began. But I wasn't fazed, as I have practiced running in the rain before. And while it is uncomfortable, it's harmless.
As a precaution, I did apply some petroleum jelly to my inner thighs, as that point of contact is usually what chafes first when I wear wet clothes. The run itself was pretty. It wound around a river and then went into the mountains. Low-hanging clouds decorated the mountains like fluffy gray beards. The air was fresh and sweet. The last kilometer was uphill to the sports center and was a brutal challenge to finish. I had to flex my mental muscles to keep my pace and push aside the thought I wanted to stop and walk. This half marathon had a time limit of 3 hours to complete. If I took a slower, relaxed pace, I would not finish. I had to run fast, and I did. I finished in about 2.5 hours, so I had about half an hour of wiggle room. My coachy AJET partner and I hosted spring surf camp with a total of 39 surf campers. It's a classic coachy event where jets get to learn how to catch waves with an Australian surf instructor and afterwards enjoy camping together. It was a great success, with 2 surfing classes Saturday and a great barbecue and campfire that burned well into the night. Everyone had a great time and enjoyed themselves over the weekend.
Teaching English as a third-year JET participant, I have begun to feel stagnant in the classroom and the office. I am no longer a newbie who is learning the ropes of Japan and ALT life, and I spent my second year honing my teaching strategies, games, English board, and student and teacher relationships. Now I feel as if I have finished most of my growing, and it's time to look for a different professional opportunity. Working with Japanese English teachers whose goal is to help students have fun and pass exams is great. But these teachers are also juggling dozens of other responsibilities, meaning planning lessons and collaborating with an ALT is not always a top priority. This is where I, as the ALT, take initiative, pre-plan games and activities and have these prepared, and try to make time and space in lessons for myself. This is my current strategy, as forcing the time to plan extensively with my JTEs would be detrimental to them. If I was to plan for longer periods with my teachers, the benefits would be that English classes might be more enthusiastic and entertaining, but it would take away time they are using for planning their homeroom lessons and other such responsibilities, and it would set them back. One such person is a man I call Dogman. Of all the villains in the Bold Basan universe, such as the dreaded Licking Man, Dogman joins the ranks of my arch nemesis. But it's not him that's the diabolical mastermind, it's his dog. Every morning, he walks his dog along the path I run, and if we happen to encounter each other, his dog will sit quietly and assess me, and when I get close enough, it will go ballistic, barking and snarling and lunging. I think the dog does this to everyone, as in the morning sometimes I can hear it barking and carrying on in the distance. Also, even when the dog is done walking, its villainous rampage cannot be quenched. When the dog is put back in its house, it will slam the window and bark at people walking along the path past the house. Usually, I make a couple laps past Dogman in the morning, and every time I do, I wait for the dog to jump scare me as I stream past. But, as always, there are time limits that adds some pressure to the event. With Yosakoi dance practices, running, swimming, going to the gym, working a full-time job, my days have been quite busy this month and quite full. Getting a road trip on a Saturday or Sunday morning is about the best I can manage for traveling. This means my recent exploration adventures have been mostly small, but for the sake of exploration and Bold Basan footage, I've done a little bit. I've been designing posters and graphics like a mad illustrator for the Kochi AJET and Bold Basan. It feels good to be keeping busy and updating our graphics to make it look good and fresh, and I feel a sense of pride when Jets join the Kochi AJET community and things look nice, like someone cares about the job being done. Part of my philosophy when making an event is to make a nice poster for it. It doesn't just convey information to the people attending, but also shows that somebody's willing to put in the time and effort to make the event fun and meaningful.
It shows I care, and I'm willing to take the time and effort to make it cool.
I ran back down the hill to the bay, and within minutes, horns sounded and guns fired. The race was on. Immediately, what I noticed about swimming competitions is that other people are the worst obstacle. They kick you, whack you with their arms, ram into you, crawl over you, and sometimes even grab you. Just them swimming anywhere near you gets in the way, even behind you. As if swimming in the ocean didn't suck enough, now I was a swimming punching bag, getting smashed and slammed by other racers. Mercifully, around the second corner of the course, the herd began to thin, and I had more space to swim freely and concentrate on swimming in a straight line. Getting fresh water and fresh air, I felt my strength returning. Going back to my hastily assembled race basket, I accidentally hopped a barrier, and one of the marshals made me take the 5 steps to go back around it. It's weird, after such a harrowing and brutal swim, my mind was not quite there. I disassociated a little bit and forgot that the barriers mattered. I think putting my mind elsewhere was how I managed to complete the swim and ignore the various things that were painful and uncomfortable, but I needed to come back into reality and pay more attention. I threw on my shirt, drank some sports drink, slipped on my shoes, and sprinted off to complete the 8-kilometer run. The Aquathon's extra challenge was extreme and dangerous heat. The temperature outside was a whopping 38 degrees Celsius, and the officials had actually shortened the running portion by 2 kilometers for this reason. The heat wasn't fun, but it didn't slow my pace or reduce my energy. I still had plenty of drive after completing the swim. My students were happy to see me along the running course and offered me water, sponges, and even gleefully sprayed me down with a garden hose. It all helped keep me and other racers cool in the extreme weather. About 5 minutes into the run, I felt so much better and stronger. I was easily able to complete it in a good time. Many of my students were waiting for me at the finish line, and it felt amazing crossing it and completing the aquathon. My partners for the Kochi AJET and for Koban block stepped down this year, and finding a replacement for them has proved difficult. Since these are volunteer positions to hold within the JET community, and are also leadership positions, I think most people don't want the responsibility with so little personal reward. I can still manage these things fine by myself, but having a partner was a luxury. With the help of the Koban Jet community, we made an epic welcome video for our 2024 Jets, featuring events, landscapes, and landmarks in our region. I hope this video will give new Jets a good idea of what our local region can offer, and will further encourage and comfort them in their transition to life in Japan.
Costumes, I got a little bit of war makeup, and after waiting around in the heat, we began the parade. It was hot. After 2 dances, my uniform was soaked with sweat. When I say soaked, I mean just tsunami levels drenched. Thankfully, the mixture of the dancing, the loud music, and the crowds filled me with adrenaline and determination, and that kept fatigue at bay. This year, our uniforms are inspired by the sunrise on Areno Beach, and the light rays shining through the early morning mist. I do like this year's style, although I'm a sucker for blue, so I think I like last year's uniforms a little bit better. After we competed our last dance, the parade continued. I caught some of the Mikoshi dancers carrying shrines, swaying and chanting back and forth through the streets. It's so fascinating to me, the concept of people dancing through the streets with Shinto gods on their shoulders. It was my first time driving across Tokushima onto the main island of Japan. I must say, Tokushima viewed from the highway is stunning. It's miles and miles of a scenic mountainscape valley with a sleepy river running and winding down it. thousands of houses built along the valley floor. It's gorgeous. I stopped at the Naruto to see the whirlpools, and although I went at the best time of day to see them, unfortunately the current didn't cooperate and no whirlpools formed. It was still an insanely gorgeous stretch of ocean and a bridge, and I took plenty of pictures. Driving in Osaka itself was hectic. Some traffic accidents caused massive delays on the highway. To make matters worse, I accidentally stayed at a love hotel downtown Osaka. Thankfully, it was very PG. I didn't even know it was a love hotel until I came back at night, and it was lit up like a neighbor who hadn't taken down his Christmas lights. While the event of another earthquake is unlikely, its chance of occurring is still higher than normal, because this is the Nankai, and it should be taken seriously. Kochi AJET had to postpone our river float, as a disaster scenario with new jets floating on a river connected to the ocean with little evacuation options is a nightmare I don't want to entertain. Also, I used my platform to spread earthquake safety information and preparation material as far as I could. Being prepared and having supplies in the event of a disaster is the best thing to do to combat fear. Since many jets may have felt isolated, lonely, and scared by this news, my AJET partner and I organized an online gaming night for people to play and relax with their fellow jets, and hopefully not feel so alone.
In case the recent Nankai earthquake wasn't enough natural disaster fun, Kochi Prefecture was also threatened by a powerful typhoon in late August. Leading up to the typhoon's landfall, Kuroshio experienced heavy rain and powerful winds just from the outskirts of the storm. As the days progressed, the typhoon was predicted to grow in power, and so a few Kuroshio jets asked to stay over at my house and wait out the storm. We made a curry dinner, played card games, and slept on futons in my living room while the storm raged around us. I realized for the first time that my house comes equipped with storm shields, which are rolling metal sheets I can slide over my windows that face seaside. Sliding them over the windows, it felt like I was prepping for a zombie apocalypse, and that's not entirely an exaggeration. Kuroshio was in apocalypse mode. Shops and businesses were closed, the streets were empty, children were staying home from school, but of course, ALT still had to go into work, even though we didn't have any classes, because of ridiculous bureaucratic reasons. Kochi AJET splashed down on the stunning Shimanto River with a significantly larger floating crew compared to last year. It was relaxing, the water was cool, and the mountains and forests were bright green and breathtaking. Everyone had a fantastic and relaxing time. The tradition of Kochi river floats lives on, another successful event in the books. Speaking of AJET, I not only played in the Ehime AJET football tournament, but to my surprise, my team won the entire thing. We were the legendary Team Gaijins, a ragtag group assembled from multiple different prefectures and complete strangers. Somehow, despite our differences, we were able to come together and play to our strengths, and use that synergy to defeat our opponents. Let's talk about a classic Japanese school event, Sports Day. It's an event similar to track and field competitions back in Canada and the US, but Sports Day is an in-school competition, meaning students don't compete across schools. During Sports Day, there is an emphasis on school spirit and teamwork, and many events require less technique and physical prowess and are more like games. The students practice and train hard for 2 weeks after summer vacation, and a stiff rivalry forms between the two groups, red and white. The students' focus is on perfecting their team cheer, usually a highly spirited and coordinated routine. Also, students practice a dance routine for the country-renowned dance battle, a student and teacher favorite. I was surprised how big the katsu were, and the kids wasted no time cutting into them. The smell of fish guts wasn't great, and some of the fish were a little bloody, but the students were surprisingly stoic and undeterred by the gore. They expertly dismantled their respective fish, sometimes with a helping hand from the katsu meister. After removing the guts and the head, the students worked to cut the fish into fillets. It was satisfying as they ran the fillet knife down the ribs of the fish and cut off good-looking slices. After trimming their fillets, they seared them over a straw fire. Straw burns fast, but extremely hot. so it quickly sears the outside of the fish and delivers a smoky campfire-cooked taste. After searing, they cut the fish into handsome slices and arrange the meat neatly on a plate. With a scattering of sea salt and green onions on top, the dish is ready to serve. Being bold by my definition doesn't mean being loud, reckless, and attention-seeking, but it does mean taking chances, putting yourself out there, trying something new, to take on a challenge and do everything possible to succeed. But the thing is, if you continuously take on bigger and bigger challenges, eventually you will fail. And sometimes challenges you conquered long ago and thought were easy might catch you by surprise.
Everyone must stand alone. I hear you call my name, and it feels like home.
The barbecue may have defeated me, but I crushed the Ryoma Dappon Marathon in Yasuhara. It was scary. I bonked on a practice half marathon the week before because of improper hydration and nutrition, meaning my muscles grew so tired I ran out of energy and couldn't finish the run. So I was a little worried I wouldn't do well for the real race. Turns out my anxiety and proper preparation led me to success, as I ate plenty of carbohydrates and hydrated, and I killed it running a sub 2 hour half marathon without bonking. In fact, I finished with plenty of energy to spare. Late September, I made the trek down to Tokushima to play touch rugby with Kagawa and Tokushima Jets in the 2024 Kansai Masters tournament. It was a rough weekend for me. I didn't catch a great sleep in the hotel the night before, so I powered up that morning on Lawson coffee and boiled egg sandwiches, and I showed up ready to throw down. The Jets were kind enough to teach me how to play. I remember playing flag rugby back in high school, but touch rugby has different rules entirely. The punishment for getting tackled or tagged in touch rugby is simply setting the ball down and having someone else on your team immediately pick it up. It's more of a punishment for the team on defense because after every tackle, they must run back 7 meters and then run forward again to re-tackle the ball holder. This means the team on offense can get around 28 meters for free just by playing the get tackled, pick up, run forward, repeat game. It was second period English class on a lazy Wednesday morning. I was giving my usual greeting when my students announced that my car window was broken. It had been a month since my last car incident, and I hadn't been attacked by the Kochi jungle on my drive into work, so I thought they were pulling my leg. I finished the class, walked to the staff room, and sure enough, the back window of my car had been completely busted. How the heck did that happen? This November, my parents made a round-world trip to little old Kuroshio to spend a week and a half at my place. We went on a Kochi-wide excursion, experiencing everything from Kochi Castle to the Nyoto Blue, to Sushiro, Irino Beach, Lawson, temples, mountains, forests, hiking, train rides, boat rides, and so much more. On the very first day, I hit them with the trifecta of Japanese junk food, takoyaki, yakisoba, and okonomiyaki, and every subsequent meal during their trip was damn good as well, especially the food I could cook for them. The massive highlight of the trip was bringing my folks to school with me to meet my students. The Japanese students waited for us with bated breath, shouted hello and good morning down the hallways, and whispered and giggled amongst themselves. In every class, my parents got to introduce themselves. Then my dad and I broke out our guitars and played Wellerman, Arietta's Song, and Four Strong Winds.
4 strong winds that blow only 7 speeds that run high. All these things that don't change how one is. One day when the tonguing gets done, we'll take our leave and go. We had not been 2 weeks from shore and down on the right whale walk. Captain called all hands and swore he'd take that whale in tow.
Kochi AJET hosted our annual autumn surf camp, and it was a blast. As per usual, I joined the morning surfing lesson with a small group of early risers.
The waves were gentle and large, and I caught some great ones. I didn't go too hard on the surfing, as the following day I would run an ultramarathon, and I didn't want to risk tiring myself out. Honestly, I was taking my chances by surfing anyway, but I wanted to support the surf camp as much as I could, despite having a prior commitment. I managed to only launch my surfboard at one other ALT, and thankfully didn't hurt her too badly. Later that evening, it was sprinkling rain, and I was terrified about the prospects of barbecue. To spite the weather and take revenge for my failed barbecue last month, I lit 2 barbecues for campers to enjoy. I was less scared running an ultramarathon than I was running a marathon. Perhaps because I'm used to marathon procedure by now, perhaps it's because I entered the ultra with a do-or-die mindset. Don't get me wrong, it's been a looming challenge since I signed up and I felt the nerves, but at the start of the run and during the run itself, my mind was blanketed with a determined calm. I was confident I could do it. My thoughts were like, yes, this is going to be a serious challenge. Yes, this is going to suck and hurt a lot. But I've trained for this, I prepared everything I could to succeed. All I gotta do is not stop. After 7 hours, I pulled into Shimanto City and finished the race. Some of my students were standing at the finish line and called my name as I crossed. I felt so proud and happy seeing them. I was proud that they would watch me accomplish one of the biggest challenges of my life, and in a way, I could do it for them. It reminded me why I started running in the first place, because students were watching me and encouraging me. It's so meaningful and powerful.
Kobo and Jet swung into the Kochi Adventure Course. It's a rope, zipline, climbing, and obstacle course built up into the Yasuhara Forest. On the drive up, I was terrified the freezing sprinkling of rain would turn into heavy rain, and this event would be cancelled like the barbecue. But to my luck, the weather worked out. I saw a fellow Jet parked on the side of the road driving up. Apparently, he had spotted some wild monkeys and had pulled over to take a video. Despite the monkeys and the weather, everyone arrived safely, and we got to climbing. The course took about 2.5 hours, and the funniest and most terrifying obstacle was the Tarzan swing, where adventurers drop and swing from a tree, face first into a net. Most people screamed when they swung, and I thought I would be a tough guy and stay silent. But when you swing, there's a brief few seconds of weightlessness, unlike riding a zip line where you feel supported the entire time. So despite my attempts to be tough, I did scream as I fell, a fact I'm sure nobody will ever know. A grin of pure, unrelinquished malice on his face. I'm sure my own expression was far less enthused. When I refused to acknowledge Belly Boy, to my supreme horror, he positioned himself in front of me and lifted his shirt up over his head, yelling at me in Japanese, "Look at my stomach!" Now, you know how he earned the name Belly Boy. I was mortified, and I shot my eyes to the roof of the market. I responded in Japanese, "Oh, I can't see, too bad." But my nemesis was undeterred. Look at my stomach," he insisted. The Japanese grandmothers around me gently scolded the boy, saying, "Put your shirt down, aren't you cold?" Eventually, Belly Boy complied, and as the grandmothers distracted him, I made my escape, bumping unnaturally, and the steering felt odd. Sure enough, the tire was now completely flat, and I would have to scramble and find a ride for work. As terrible as that is, I'm very lucky, as the aforementioned weekend before this breakdown, I was driving in the Yasuhara Mountains with no cell service, and if my tire had gone flat up there, it would have been an even bigger pain in the ass than it already was. At this point, I think I'm ready to ride trains or walk to all future destinations. Another great day. Kochi AJET ventured down the Nyoto River into ancient Ino town to make homemade washi paper postcards. With a crowd of 20 paper people, we drove straight into the heart of the museum and directly into crafting. I've run through this workshop with Jets and my parents before, so I was familiar with the procedure. After the event, a small group of Jets and I headed to a local cafe called Goose on the Roof. It was a quaint and fascinating place, decorated like a grandmother's house with knitted doilies, odd retro souvenir decorations, and a general old homey feel.
True to its fabled name, there was indeed a goose on the roof. This year was the hardest conference I've been to, but also the most personally rewarding. As a leader, you step up and put yourself in a position to lead and be questioned and criticized. People are watching you and your actions, and they're judging you. This isn't a bad thing. It's the job of a leader to answer questions to the best of their ability, or to withstand the criticism of their actions and take responsibility for both the good and the bad. By stepping up, you are literally and metaphorically putting yourself in this position. But I'm not used to the feeling. Nobody knew who I was the past few times I've been to the conference. I could be the gray man and blend in with the crowd. Now, nearly everybody knew me, and trust me, my big bald head sticks out like a beacon. At the conference, I met multiple Jets who watched my YouTube channel before coming to Japan or while in Japan, and they recognized me and came up to me and told me. It's a feeling I'm not used to, but it made me feel joyful, and the purpose that I intended for the Bold Basan is being fulfilled. I realized I was experiencing success from the Bold Basan while still working in Japan, and that was honestly an indescribably good feeling. These Jets told me that I inspired them, they admired me, or that I'd influenced them in some way. I kind of felt bashful about it all. I wasn't sure what to say to them. Besides, thank you. I guess it's a small taste of what being a large YouTuber would actually feel like. I love inspiring people and sharing my enthusiasm, but I feel as awkward about compliments as I do criticism. It's a real skill to accept both criticism and praise with grace, to still hold your own balanced judgment of yourself and what you do. You're not as awful as haters make you out to be, but you're not a saint who can do no wrong either. Out on the playground, they would run up to me with smiling, beaming faces, yelling, "It's-a me, Mario!" And I would happily reply, "It's-a me, Mario!" And they would see me in the hallway and yell, "It's-a me, Mario!" And I would teach their class sometimes, and they would greet me with, "You guessed it, it's-a me, Mario!" I don't go to that school any longer, but even now, while I'm out in public, if an elementary school student sees me, they'll yell out, "It's-a me, Mario!" If I'm ever worried that I never made a meaningful multicultural impact in Japan, in teaching, or in my life, that no one will remember my name and my legacy will be lost in the sands of time, I will think back to those children fondly and say to myself, "It's-a me, Mario."
You know, Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen, Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen. But do you recall the most famous reindeer of all? Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it glows. Good.
It might seem obvious, but something cool I've noticed about students is that they look up to you, and not just metaphorically. Whenever people have said that phrase to me, I always thought of it as a turn of phrase, but people, and more specifically students, actually physically look up to you when they see you as a role model. When you are walking around, or speaking or interacting with them, they watch you, meet your eye, and seem to pay you more attention. They also have a tendency to copy you. I see the copying more frequently at the elementary level, but with students in junior high, I see it more purposefully, where the students admire you on a more intelligent and sophisticated level. I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, but more so to share my revelation. It's cool being someone worthy of being looked up to. Even when times were tough, my supervisor, Bonji, was encouraging and stalwart for me. He faced challenges himself. I remember a class of just 3 girls, and they were stubbornly against speaking or learning any English. He would buy me a coffee after work and tell me, "I had 3 girls. I was defeated today.
But he would always go back and try to teach them again the next day, and I felt inspired. Whenever students would be rude or mean to me or act out in some way, I would think to myself, well, I was defeated today, but tomorrow is a new day. I will try again. Bonji was a teacher that prioritized fun and learning, and being considerate of your fellow teachers. I felt I could carry out his intent in my own classroom, and more broadly in my teaching methods. I was good friends with my fellow ALT co-workers. Our hangouts felt special and meaningful to me. The Japan around me was fresh and new. Japanese culture was fascinating and novel. There were challenges, adventures, and even pitfalls waiting for me to discover, and I was naive and happy to tackle it all. I continued to push myself past my comfort zone and conquer things I was afraid of, taking on risk and challenge. But when the time came to recontract for this year, for the first time I didn't feel the same resolute conviction to stay. So what happened? What changed? I think, simply put, I have outgrown ALT work, expatriate culture, and the JET program as a whole. The JET program was my dream, and for the last 3 years, I have lived my dream. But now, I've completed it. Japan was always a transient place for me. It was never somewhere I intended to live permanently. When I first came to Japan, I compared Kuroshio to Termina from The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. These two places share similarities in the fact that both face a future doom. For Termina, this was the moon falling, and for Kuroshio, doom comes in the form of a future Nankai earthquake and tsunami. Both are also a stepping stone in their respective stories. Our hero Link was never meant to stay in Termina. He was there to undertake an adventure, meet people, change lives, learn lessons, change himself, and then depart. And I feel the same way about Kuroshio in Japan.
I think it's a combination of knowing that I did everything I could and getting sick was out of my control, and also the fact I'm still planning on running my own individual marathon. The weekend I did the road trip, I was listening to a podcast featuring Bo Nickel, who is a wrestling champion and UFC fighter. He lost a few big fights as a teenager and young man, and he was talking about how he learned not to tie his identity to his results. He said he can enjoy competing more if he's not so serious about the outcome. He is still serious, and he trains seriously hard, but he doesn't let a loss or a setback devalue him, and equally as difficult, he tries not to let a win credit him either. To phrase it another way, he doesn't tie victory or defeat to his identity. He's got a true stoic champion's mindset where he's like, win or lose, the day after the competition, we're moving on, back to training, or on to the next challenge. In Japan, I have learned that health is incredibly important, maybe one of the most important things. I want to take this lesson back with me to Canada and do something to help people who used to be like I was, or to prevent people from becoming obese. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Right now, that looks like aiming to be a gym teacher or coach where I can encourage kids to eat healthy and exercise and show the benefits of a healthier lifestyle. I can also relate to adults or kids who are struggling with weight, and this will help me be more sympathetic and take a more effective approach. This is a worthy direction of work, I think, and it would be meaningful to me to help people in this way. I also want to own my own successful gym one day. Right now, I am certainly no expert on workouts or business, but I think offering a service for people to use to improve themselves would be really awesome. I come back to my Japanese school and it's just so muted and calm in comparison. It's like a lifestyle whiplash. I felt this the strongest when I ran the ultramarathon last year and went to school the next day. The day prior, I had pushed myself farther and harder than I ever had in one of the most intense challenges of my life. And the next day, I was working with students, telling them how to spell dog or cat, and to not forget to capitalize names. It's an odd feeling. It's hard for me to determine a word or phrase to explain this feeling, but I think other Jets or people who live adventurous lives outside of their day jobs kind of probably understand. Even Japanese people have told me that we Jets do more cultural or adventure things locally than the Japanese people do.
I considered quitting. I was cold, sore, wet, shaking, coughing, and miserable. It wasn't the usual self-talk that kept me going for this run. In this darkest hour, I didn't want to let myself down. I couldn't control that a cold prevented me from running the Ryoma Marathon, but right there, in my own individual marathon, I didn't have that excuse any longer. I was committed, and I was in total control. There was only one thing stopping me in that moment, and it was me. And I wasn't going to let myself down. I completed the 42 kilometers and got my revenge. Before I switched back to my normal junior high school in February, I showed my students the Kuroshio Town of Beautiful Hearts video. It was the last time I would teach these students, and I thought hard about what I wanted to do for my last class, and how I would want students to remember me. I wanted to be remembered as a fun teacher who played games, but also as a teacher who cared about the community, the people, and by extension the students. So, for the last class, we watched a short video and played Jeopardy for the rest of the time. If you haven't watched it yet, Kuroshio, the Town of Beautiful Hearts is my best video on this channel, and probably the one I'm most proud of. It tells the story of Kuroshio Town and its people, and is essentially my love letter to both. I was nervous showing students because I really poured my heart and soul into making that, and I was worried they wouldn't enjoy it, or maybe they wouldn't understand the meaning. After showing them, the Japanese teachers asked the students what they thought. The students said, "You know Kuroshio well. I enjoyed. I felt warm. I feel like you know us. You understand us well." Their feedback was amazing. I felt quite honored to have integrated enough in the community that I can tell a story of the town and its people and not be ignorant or out of touch. What a relief. The kids are the best critics too. They aren't afraid to trample your feelings if they don't like something. Believe me, I know. But it seems like they approved. So I'm glad I could express my compassion, and with a tender heart I said goodbye. The day of the event, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. The air was like baby bear porridge, just right, and I was looking forward to the race. Little did I know it was all a deception. The actual course was changed last minute and took place in a closed park, up a steep mountain road, back down, and then back up again in a 3-kilometer loop. So, unbeknownst to me, I was in a race that was a total of 10 kilometers uphill, 10 kilometers downhill, alternating every 3 kilometers. And I only figured that out when I finished the first lap and I wasn't running on the beautiful flat path along the ocean that I had envisioned. Boy, I was not thrilled. Mount Miyun had a fantastic panoramic view of the surrounding mountain range, and was worth the climb. I met a couple at the top, a man from Germany and a woman from Italy. They had been traveling across Shikoku and had passed through western Kochi and Kuroshio a few days prior, participating in the Kurogain knife-making workshop. It was nice to chat and kind of weird finding commonalities with these people I met in the middle of nowhere. It was nerve-wracking. Looking down into the smoking abyss, I could see bubbling blue liquid, not the red-hot magma I imagined. Terrifying nonetheless. At this spot, I bought a small piece of hardened magma for 100 yen. Next, I climbed up a mountain behind the smoking crater. The landscape here was devoid of life, a desert of ash, beautiful in the same way the surface of Mars or maybe the moon would be. This mountain was a difficult ascent. The path up this mountain was made of small boulders, so I scrambled and pulled myself up, which took about an hour. Clambering over the final rocks, I was rewarded with another amazing view. With 2 volcano hikes completed that day, I was satisfied with my adventure. There was nothing else I could do that would top climbing a volcano. As I was climbing down, I heard a terrifying announcement.
The level of sulfur dioxide had become too dangerous, and people were being ordered to evacuate directly from around the crater. I think most people view the teacher-student relationship as that the teacher is supposed to fill up the student with knowledge, like filling up a glass of water. I think to some extent this is correct. There is a component of passing on knowledge as a teacher that is important, but there is an entire dimension to teaching that is being missed. What the Japanese system emphasizes now is students studying English to pass school exams. So that's what they use English for. They get filled up with English grammar for tests, and they never use the language again for anything else. You don't have to take my word for it. The abysmal literacy rates of English in Japan are a testament to the effectiveness of this system. My view of what a teacher should be is a lit candle, lighting the wick of another candle. If the students are motivated to pursue things in English by themselves because they enjoy it and are having fun, then that's the ultimate long-term victory. They'll not just use English for tests and work, but for other aspects of life too. We shouldn't be teaching students English just so they can pass a test. We should be teaching them so they can have a good life. At my new elementary school, students are so much fun to play with. My first day, they were excitedly chatting to each other in English before they met me. It was really cute. I could hear them from the teacher's room chatting down the hall. I play with them every chance I get, and the games always change. Sometimes it's baseball, soccer, catch, dodgeball, or sometimes we even just ride on the unicycles. Man, trying a unicycle for the first time, those things are deadly on the shins. So I rode one for recess, and I will need much more practice to be proficient. I was falling down and whipping around trying to balance. My students gave me some grace and didn't make too much fun of me, but they might have also been secretly impressed that I was just willing to try. Once again, Coachy AJET strapped on hiking boots and ascended the tallest mountain in western Japan, Mount Ishizuchi. This event was a mountain to organize and certainly a mountain to climb, and I was glad to finally get the hike going. As an organizer, there is a weight of responsibility on your shoulders before and during an event, so waiting for the day of the hike was the worst part. It's as much of a celebration as it is a relief when an event is completed. We had a large expedition of 17 total climbers this year. The weather was perfect, sunny but not too hot, and the day remained cloudless. This time, I undertook the 5 chain courses offered by the mountain. These sections are steep vertical walls with jutting rocks that offer a lot of hand and footholds. I'm physically fit, so I was confident in my athletic ability, and rightfully so. I surprised myself how easily I could climb this. Many of our hiking party were Canadian. I felt relaxed and quite at home hiking alongside everyone. When we went to take the group picture at the top, I slipped into my Canadian accent and said, "Oh yeah, that's a good one." And the Canadians chimed in mocking me, "Oh yeah, bud, oh for sure, that's a good one, bud." It was really funny. My design this year is inspired by a mix of Greek and Egyptian symbolism. I drew Athena, the Greek goddess of war and wisdom, and her owl. I also drew the Eye of Horus, which is a symbol of wisdom, enlightenment, and attention. I called the t-shirt Awaken. Wisdom is many things, but to me in this representation, the Eye of Horus is a kind of self-consciousness. In Japan, I have become more aware of myself and how other people perceive me, how I represent myself, what I do, what I say, who I associate with, what I eat and drink, what thoughts and ideas I entertain, and much more. In a way, it made me less happy to be more deeply aware of myself and the world around me, and what consequences my actions have. In the same way, it's brought me greater joy to be able to change and rectify parts about myself and my environment that I dislike and have control over. It feels like a real life awakening, like the Tanner I was before was asleep, and ignorant to a part of the world and a part of life, and now I'm not. The second part of my t-shirt is the aforementioned goddess, Athena. Wisdom and war seem strange to put together. War is such a terrible thing, showcasing the worst people have to offer. Why would it be paired with wisdom, which could be described as the knowledge of lived experience, perception, and forethought? Well, I like the idea of having the foresight to be prepared to fight, like a trained martial artist. War is terrible, yes, but you are more likely to have the confidence to avoid war or a fight if you are prepared for it. Better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. I see Athena as a symbol of that preparation. Not only is she ready to fight, but she has the wisdom to continue sharpening her skills. One good marathon deserves another. This year, the weather cooperated for the Skumo Half Marathon. I ran the 21 kilometers with my friend and fellow ALT and local surfing legend, Charlie. We enjoyed fresh bananas, oranges, sour plums, and water and sports drink at the plentiful rest stations. Compared to the half marathon disaster I attended in Ehime, this run was a breeze, and the runners were well supported. Charlie and I chatted the entire time and kept up a solid pace, finishing a full 15 minutes faster than my record last year. I think back to the day I arrived in Narita Airport in Tokyo, sitting and waiting and processing, staring at the golden pastel sunset over the ocean, thinking it was so beautiful. I had left my life in Canada behind me, and I had no real clue what to expect from Japan. I was too tired to be scared. My thoughts were drifting, wondering if I had what it would take to become a good ALT. I didn't know what obstacles would come at me, but I knew I wasn't going to give up, no matter how hard it was. Maybe I wasn't ready for the challenge of ALT life, but that was okay. By undertaking the challenge, I was confident I could grow into a person who could master it. After all, I didn't come all the way to Japan to stay the same. I was here for an adventure.
Surf camp this spring was heartwarming. I liked the waves in the morning surf session, but they were crazy powerful. When I did manage to fight my way out into the ocean and catch a wave, it was like jumping on the top of a moving vehicle. I would just shoot off towards the beach. It was all I could do to balance. But even though I spent most of the morning being slammed and tossed around by the ocean, I worked up a solid appetite for the barbecue that afternoon. When stomachs were full and the barbecue died down, we moved to the beach for a bonfire. One guy I helped at a surf camp ages ago was there, and he had come all the way from Ehime both years. He told me Kochi wouldn't be the same without me. What a kind thing to say. We had a chat and wished each other well. Another guy, a complete stranger, came up to me and said he admired me and that he was inspired by my videos. He caught me off guard, but it's such a wonderful thing for me to hear. It's still a strange feeling to be admired by many of my peers, and it's still strange for people to know me and my adventures in Japan, but for me not to know them. I'm sure there are hundreds, if not thousands of people my videos have reached the last 4 years, and I hope they'll reach and help many more people in the years to come. I decided to step down from the role of Kochi AJET representative. It's a weight off my shoulders, and I'm glad to be free from the burden of leadership. I'm proud of the work I put in and the dozens of events I planned and ran the last 2 years with my 2 partners, Ellie and Mia. I'm extra proud because I did it all without being able to speak Japanese fluently. Also, I learned many leadership skills, techniques, and lessons along the way, and I'll be able to apply those to social situations for the rest of my life. I really enjoyed making artwork and videos for AJET events, and I'd like to think I made the communities I was a part of a brighter, safer, and more welcoming place. Over the last 2 years, I never went behind my partner's back on any decision. I took responsibility for myself and saw problems that arose, and I was professional. I never compromised my personal integrity. I made mistakes, but I learned and always improved. Some events didn't take off, like my final ice skating event and some community projects I proposed, like a Kochi video contest. But I view that as a mark of entrepreneurship. The only true failure would have been to not try. This was the largest party I've hosted at my house. Despite living in the same region, many of these JET people hadn't even met each other before. We swapped stories. I got to regale a captive audience about my Japanese arch nemesis. Everyone was just as horrified about Licking Man as I am. After a while, I showed people the interior of my house, and 3 of us got to show off our guitar skills and dancing techniques. 1 month remains on my Japanese journey. We've come a long way, haven't we? The view looks great from up here, but now is not the time to relax. The adventure isn't over yet. We've got more work to do. I have a biathlon to complete, a mountain to climb, places to explore, many goodbyes to make, and I actually have to leave Japan. Maybe this final month will be the most challenging yet. Good thing I'm always up for a challenge. Bring it on.
After 4 months of sweltering, hazy afternoons in the pool, I was prepared for the 2025 Kuroshio Aquathlon. I completed this biathlon event last year solo, but this time I wanted to try the team relay. The aquathlon is a 1.5 kilometer swim in the ocean, followed by a 10 kilometer run. I took on the swimming portion and managed to convince my Japanese co-worker, through a combination of sushi and bribery, to do the running portion. It's a solid challenge. Longtime viewers of the Bold Basan might remember my 1-year episode where I talked about writing letters to a Japanese girl who was struggling to attend school due to self-esteem and confidence issues. I had success motivating her and inspiring her. I didn't write to her telling her to do anything. I was just interested in getting to know her as a person, giving her some of my time and attention and showing I cared about her. That method was hugely successful. Simply by me being interested in her, she built up the confidence to try school once again. 3 years later, I had dinner with her and her family, and I'm glad to say this story has a happy ending. The girl pushed through junior high and ended up going to an agricultural high school. She is so confident now, probably more confident than even me, and she has a lot of friends. She goes to school every day. Working with animals has made her stronger because she has not just learned how to raise, but also how to farm and harvest animals, which is brutal and also something very mature. Her mother invited me over for dinner, and I was shocked that her daughter drives a moped, which functions basically like a motorbike. I was jealous. I think it's pretty rad. Actually, the very same day we had dinner, she had been pulled over for speeding and had gotten a speeding ticket for the first time. When she got home, the first thing her father told her was congratulations, and not in a mean way. He was genuinely proud of her, but he also wouldn't pay for her ticket and made her pay for herself. Ouch. She works a part-time job now and is saving up money for a Hokkaido trip with her friends, which sounds like an epic adventure. I gave her one last letter and said goodbye before I left Japan. She's growing up to be a cool person, and I'm happy to see her so strong and confident now. I'm happy I could be a small, positive influence in her life. Of everything I've done as an ALT, this is something I'm most proud of. I go 6 days a week. This combined with consistent 8 hours of sleep, a high-protein diet, and creatine has brought me great results. You can see for yourself. I'm happy with a year's worth of progress. I use a mixture of dumbbells and machines for most exercises, and now I have added 3 difficult but powerful exercises into the mix: bench press, pull-ups, and barbell squats. I do cardio every day, usually running 8 kilometers or walking 4 if I need to, as a baseline to maintain my fitness. I strategically use caffeine, cutting myself off around noon so I can get a good night's rest. On weekends, I'll enjoy a sugar-free energy drink and then hit the gym in the morning for a killer workout, and then really hammer on the weights. I avoid sugar and sweets and junk food and snacks if I can. Occasionally, I'll allow myself to indulge, but I honestly don't feel great afterwards, so I go back to eating clean again. I know my goal with the Bold Basan was to inspire people, but I never thought I would actually meet people who watched my channel and were influenced by me. What a crazy concept. Also, I had a fear that if someone who watched my channel met me, they would be disappointed by me. They say you should never meet your heroes, or you should kill your idols, because people aren't who you imagine them to be. I'm a disciplined person who has undergone a lot of personal growth,
but I have many vices, flaws, insecurities, and weaknesses. Hanging out with Charlie, I wondered if I would disappoint him. But that wasn't the case. He is a grounded person who accepted me for who I am. I think it helps that the bold Basan isn't really a mask. I am the same person when no one is watching me. I got to see Charlie at work firsthand at a local festival. He greeted his students, teachers, students' parents, and the Board of Education staff, and then joked and spoke to them as if they were friends he had known all his life. I was stunned. I don't think I've met anyone so charismatic in my life. My mentor, retired supervisor, and friend Bonji visited Kochi for a fishing trip and took me and a few Kuroshio ALTs out for supper. I ate some of the best food I've had in Japan and in my life. Fresh sashimi, katsu tataki, croquettes, fried chicken, and much more. Bonji and I chatted. I was happy he was proud of my work in Japan. He told me, "You've learned so much. You made students happy," to which I laughed and agreed. He continued, "To be honest, I was worried about you when you first came. I thought you would be an introvert, but you changed." After my first year, I said back, I got braver. I took more chances, and I tried many new things. Bonji, ever the wealth of kindness, gifted me a pen and a journal, as well as a few photo collages of my time in Japan. "It's good. You tried many things. I believe in you." He added, "You can do anything." After a soul-filling dinner, and with a heavy heart, I parted ways and said goodbye to Bonji. But not goodbye forever. He promised to visit my family farm back in Canada, so I look forward to the day I can repay his kindness. Just as first impressions are important, last impressions are important too. I was asking myself since I first arrived in Japan, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? How will students remember me? How will Japan remember me, if people remember me at all? Whenever I think back to the great teachers I had in my life, they were fun and playful, cheerful, and inspirational. They cared about students as people, not as test scores, and they taught me to love life and the world. I wanted to be remembered as a person like that. So that's how I conducted myself the last 4 years in and out of the classroom. I thought hard about what meaningful gifts I could give my students and what we should do for our final class. I decided on 2 gifts. I would hand draw and digitally color Pokemon posters, and I would write them all personalized handwritten letters. With over 100 students, I had my work cut out for me. For the last class, I wanted to play games, have students relax and enjoy using English, but I also wanted to show them my Kuroshio Town of Beautiful Hearts video, as it's my love letter to the people of Kuroshio Town. So, with my final project at hand and my days numbered, I was in a race against the clock to write and draw as much as I possibly could for my students. I set to work using every second of spare time I had, both at home and at work, hammering out letters, drawings, and customizing Jeopardy and Kahoot games for our final lessons. I did not have the time to draw all of the students' poster at my junior high. I would have needed 6 months, not 3 weeks, so instead, I drew them 6 epic class posters. However, at my elementary school, since the students and staff of that school are so small, I was able to draw everyone their own poster. They turned out great. I'm very pleased by the designs. Many early mornings, hand cramps, and late nights burning midnight oil later, the time arrived. At last, it was the final week before summer vacation, and my final lessons would begin. With a bitter sweetness, my students and I played together and exchanged gifts. My students had written their own letters to me. They told me many wonderful things. Many told me they loved me. Many said they liked my haircut, and one boy even wrote saying he wanted to be like me one day. Honestly, I can't think of a bigger compliment. My elementary school crafted a charming treasure box for me. It was decorated with hilarious memes, pictures, and jokes from our time together. Inside were student letters and origami animals the students folded. I love it so much. It's so hilarious and heartwarming. A true treasure box. After showing my junior high students my Kuroshio video, they suspiciously asked if I was a YouTuber. I laughed, and at long last, I lifted the mask and revealed my secret identity to them. I told them that I was the Bold Basan, and I had spent the last 3.5 years making YouTube videos in Japan. Excitedly, they searched and watched a smattering of my videos on the channel. It was such a strange and surreal feeling, seeing 20 different students each class watching a different video of mine. People say they hate hearing their own voice when it's recorded. I'm used to it by now, but I will say it was really strange hearing 20 of me speaking at the same time, telling my students all about my adventures. Friends, enemies, victories, defeats, and of course telling them stories about themselves. It was weird. The feeling is hard to describe. I was shy, vulnerable, and a bit embarrassed on one hand, but proud and excited on the other. With my secret identity revealed, posters and letters given and received, and games played, there was nothing more left to do but say goodbye, with a round of fist bumps. I enjoyed teaching and hanging out with students the most out of everything I did in Japan, and so saying goodbye to them was the most difficult challenge. My junior high school held an assembly, and at the end, I was called to give a farewell speech. I stumbled through a Japanese speech I had written. First, I thanked my English teachers and the teaching staff, and I told everyone that my dream was to come to Japan and become the best ALT I could be, and that I trained every day to be that person. I said the students in Kuroshio were the greatest a teacher could ask for, which is no exaggeration. I concluded saying I loved the junior high school and Japan, and that one day I would return. It was an emotional speech, but I managed to hold back my tears, and with a heavy heart, at long last, I said goodbye. I'm going to miss everyone, but I have no regrets. I gave them all the love I had. I'm confident I had the positive impact on them I wanted to. These last 3 years, they got to see me transform myself from a scared, unconfident, overweight man into the hero teacher I dreamed of being for them from the very beginning. With that, a new adventure in Canada began. My dream was to become the best ALT in Japan, both inside and outside the classroom. A superhero teacher, someone who was a role model. But I knew before applying to the AJET program, I wasn't a great fit to be an ALT. I thought it was a miracle I got accepted. Someone like me didn't deserve such an amazing opportunity, I thought. But if there's something I want to do, I'll find a way. I'm unstoppable. People always ask me why I came to Japan. I would give them some story about my Japanese high school friend telling me I should go to Japan one day. While that's true to an extent, the real reason I went was because living and working in Japan was the hardest and scariest thing I could think of doing. And if I could master it, I knew I would be a better, stronger person as a result. So I did all those things: teaching, running, leading, bold Basan, traveling, hiking, writing. It was all a challenge for me. I wanted to get better at those skills because I knew it would make me a better person. And as a better person, I could make the world better too. Paulo Coelho said, "The reward for our work is not what we get, but who we become." At the end of my journey, I'm proud of the work I've accomplished and the person I have become as a result of my trials. So, dear viewer, what kind of challenges are you undertaking? Who are you becoming? Whoever it is, be bold.